Okay, I get it. We're supposed to share the love. But when it comes to 2 breakfast croissants for $4 from Jack in the Box, sometimes you need to share with someone who really looks out for you. That would be you. Who bought you those 2 croissants anyway? You did. Well done, you. Gold star. Go ahead, share it with yourself. Get 2 buttery croissants with freshly cracked eggs and your choice of sausage or grilled bacon and ham for $4, only at Jack in the Box. Home of breakfast served all day. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Tax not included.
Blog Talk Radio.
Writing your book is the easy part. Promoting your book so readers can find and purchase it is the hard part. Welcome to the Author Chat Show, hosted by author-publisher Lynda D. Brown. Follow us at www.facebook.com/authorchat. And to contact the show to promote your book, contact me at theauthorchatshow@gmail.com. Stay tuned and listen to today's show.
Good morning, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Author Chat Show. I'm your host, Lynda D. Brown. My guest today is author Shahara Wright. Shahara is a CEO, business law attorney, professor, community leader, speaker, and author. She is the author of the new book that just came out, From Entrepreneur to CEO, How to Position Your Business to Accelerate Growth. This is Shahara's first time on the Author Chat Show, and we'll be right back to chat with her about her book after a word from today's sponsor.
PrimeStar Publicity and Public Relations is a full-service firm ready to fill the needs of their clients. Owner Helen Cook has more than 32 years of publicity, public relations, advertising, and marketing experience, and she focuses her professional talents on working with her clients' strengths to create customized, strategic campaigns, whether their needs are great or small. Radio, TV, print, internet, publicity, marketing, creating a social media presence, branding, client positioning, author tours, speaking events. These are just some of the services PrimeStar provides for their clients. For a complete list of services and other information about the company, please visit our website, www.primestarpublicity.com, or email Helen at helen.cook@primestarpublicity.com, or phone 903-654-0938. PrimeStar's home office is located in the Houston, Texas area.
All right, welcome back to the show. For those of you just tuning in, today's guest is author Shahara Wright. Shahara is stopping by the Author Chat Show to discuss her new book, From Entrepreneur to CEO, How to Position Your Business to Accelerate Growth. Shahara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you on the show. To have an attorney who is also an author is a dream come true for this particular show. So we're going to go ahead and get started with first, since this is the first time that you've been on our show, why don't you get started with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am an attorney. Obviously, I practice in the greater Houston, Texas area, and I have been practicing for over 17 years, and I started a new company last year called the CEO Effect, and that is focusing on small business development, going from a stage 1 company to a stage 2 or stage 2 to stage 3, looking at development and growth. I'm a mother of 2 boys. One is 19, the other one is 7 or 7 and a half, as he likes to say. I just, I'm a mom. I'm a working mom, and I love what I do. I like working with small businesses, and, that's pretty much about me.
That's awesome. And, you know, it is so much going on in the Houston area. I don't know if you had a chance to hear my sponsor is actually from Houston, Prime Star Publicity. It is so much going on there. Now, were you born and raised in Houston?
I was born and raised in Houston, just left to go to college in Virginia, and then I went to law school in Texas Tech, which is in Lubbock, Texas, which is quite far from where Houston is. And I came back home.
Okay, came back home. Well, I'm sure you guys have seen tremendous growth there, and especially with the small businesses in that area. Is that one of the things that made you kind of focus on small businesses as sort of like a niche?
Not really, to be honest. I when I was in law school, I thought I wanted to do criminal law, and I took a class called transactional practice, and I actually ended up loving it. I loved doing the contracts. I loved, kind of strategizing out to how the businesses would be structured and all those kinds of things. Those are things that I enjoyed. So from there, I just started focusing on dealing with small businesses. And so when I came back to Houston, I worked with a couple of solo practitioners and decided that I really wanted to focus on small business owners, and that's just what I did. So I started my own practice focusing on that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, and again, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Pronounce it for us, because I want to make sure that they get this right.
Sure, it's Shahara.
Shahara, I love that. That is so beautiful. Now, Shahara, as a full-time attorney, mother, looks like you also are a community leader, a speaker. What possessed you to start writing?
You know, I really love to write. I've always liked writing, and honestly, I used to write all the time, and then I got busy with, my law practice and things like that, and I, had to stop just because my writing turned into legal writing, and I couldn't do all the other stuff that I wanted to do. So I have been wanting to get back to my creative roots in writing for a long time, and I finally found an opportunity and a time to really write. And I had something to say, I felt like, with regards to small business owners and how we view ourselves and how we should start thinking differently about how we deal with our business. And just talking to a bunch of different people, I just kind of realized, this was a time not only for me to say it, but to write it and put it down. And that's really kind of what I did. So I started the process last year of really trying to gather my thoughts and put it into a book that would make sense for small business owners. Exactly.
And now, can you tell us what kind of small businesses you've been able to help there in Houston?
So my clients range in types of businesses and size. The Small Business Administration defines a small business with less than $5 million, from 1 to 50 employees. So for some of us, that seems really large. And there's, but in the scheme of things, it's not that big of a business. So my clients really range in size and type, and I've dealt with a whole lot of different types of businesses. But what I find to be true across all the boards, and it doesn't matter how big or how small the business is that a lot of times the owner isn't really thinking about the business as a whole and isn't thinking about the strategies that they need to grow their business. They're only thinking about the right here and right now and what's happening to me right now and what's going on with me right now, and they're not thinking far enough out in terms of making plans. And so that's true, I think, for a small micro business, somebody that's making less than $250,000, and that's true for a company that's making $3 million. And I've worked with both types, and I find that to be true across the board. So I think that, for working with my clients, I was seeing this trend that's saying we're not planning, we're not thinking about ahead, we're not thinking about anything that we're doing. We're just trying to go out, make this money right now, and whatever consequences happen, we'll just deal with it later. And that's not the best way to go about running your business, because you end up having more problems than you would want to have if that's the way you're focusing on your business.
Do you think that's because most small business owners, I know especially with this last depression that they like to call a recession, that we all know was a depression that hit in 2008, it forced a lot of people, especially those maybe mid-40s, 50s, that could not find jobs to start their own businesses, and they just don't have that experience to look at it as a long-term thing. Do you think that's part of the problem?
That may be part of the problem. I see it a little bit differently, and I think it's more the ease of access to starting your business. And so what happens is because you don't have the barriers that you used to have in starting a business. You have the internet. You can just, put your stuff on Facebook and start selling clothes or selling whatever. You don't have all of these barriers. And because you don't have all of these barriers, people just enter into business without thinking about what it really means to own a business. So, it used to be that you had to have a certain amount of dollars, to start a business. You had to get some brick and mortar place, rent, and those were things that you had to do. You maybe had to take out a loan and those kinds of things. So it caused you to have to do more planning because of the funds that it took in order to enter into business. But now, because you don't have those kinds of barriers and you can literally start out your business, with business cards, $5 business cards, you can start a business. You don't have those barriers that don't cause you to take pause and think about what you're trying to do. So that's what I have noticed. I think that it's true that more people have been pushed into business because of the recession and people losing their jobs, and, of course, they start businesses because of that. And so I think that has something to do with it. But I think people are easily able to go into business because the barriers are so low that you don't have the requisite requirements in terms of planning that you would have had, years ago.
Right. Exactly. Now, in your book, you make up, there are 3 points that I like to really talk about before we have you read an excerpt out of your book. And this one I find to be, the first one that I'm going to mention, I find that to be so what's happening now. I guess that's the best way that I could put it. And that is small businesses that have small mom and pop businesses that have been in business for years, and then nobody's interested in taking it on. The next generation is not interested in being associated with that business. Why are many small businesses not surviving the next generation?
I think there's several reasons, but the biggest reason I think that they're not surviving to the next generation is there's no plan for them to survive to the next generation. Generally speaking, if you are running a restaurant, let's just say, you're running a restaurant, it's a mom and pop, have you brought your kids in to really help run the business? Do they understand what's happening? Is this something that they even want to do? That conversation sometimes doesn't happen, in the formative years of the children to really know if that's something that they want to do. And also what can happen is that because the business may be struggling, you may have too much debt, you may have a lot of problems in the business, and that causes the business not to be functional. So if somebody else tried to take over, they really could not because there's too much debt and there's too many problems to fix. It's better to just get rid of it than to continue it. So I believe that that's a couple of the reasons why it doesn't survive to the next generation. And you have not, and it goes back to what I've been saying is about the planning of keeping that business going. If it's something that you want to see to be a legacy to survive several, generations, then there's some setup and there's some things that you have to do to create that process so that when your kids or your cousins or nephews or whoever takes over, they can jump right in without it being a struggle for them to come into the business. And that has to have some forethought that this is something that you want to do and pass down.
Exactly. Awesome. Another thing that I like to discuss, and this actually affects me personally, so if you don't mind, I like to take my situation and discuss it very quickly about intellectual property. Okay, this is a podcast, but it's mine. How do I protect my intellectual property, which, of course, would be this podcast? Any ideas on that?
Well, there's several things that you can do. I think it just depends on what exactly you're trying to protect. So I think the two things that anyone has to know about are trademarks and copyrights and understanding the difference between the two. A trademark is a name, a logo, something that is identifier for your business. So as you have Arthur Chat with Lynda Brown, that could be something that is trademarked so that, no other person or entity can utilize that tagline or that name with regards to your business, their business. And so it creates confusion if you're saying Arthur Chat with Lynda Brown, but they use Linda instead of Lynda or something like that, then you have that protection for your trademark that you don't allow anybody else to utilize that name so that people aren't confused between you and somebody else. So that's what a trademark would do for you. And a copyright would be something that could be recorded, so you could actually copyright this particular blog, the radio show. This segment, you can actually copyright it. You could copyright other segments of it. The problem that you may have in terms of copywriting is that the cost in terms of each segment, if you try to do them separately, it would be really expensive. Although a copyright in and of itself isn't expensive, but each and every time you do it, it becomes expensive. So what I tell bloggers to do in general, and I think this would apply to your radio show, if it's something, the content that is something that you want to protect, the content itself, then it may be once a year or once a quarter, just depending on how much content you put out, you can package it and package the whole thing and copyright that package. And so that whole thing would be copywritten, and therefore, you don't have to do it like every single entity, every single time, but maybe you do it once a year or once a quarter or however much you want to do it in terms of finance, what makes sense to you. Those are things that you can do in order to protect yourself and your content.
Right. Well, since this show has been on the air since 2011, I think a trademark would probably be the cheapest way to go, even though they're not that cheap. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're actually relatively inexpensive. I guess it depends on your viewpoint, but I think that they're relatively inexpensive compared to what they do for you. So you do have to have, they do go by class. So depending upon what class you're in, and there's definitions, in class. So each class is going to cost. So therefore, it may cost more if you have multiple classes. And then it also goes by type. So you have your trademark or logo in terms of the design and how, when somebody looks at it, if you think about McDonald's and that M, that's something that you look at. That's their logo. You trademark that. And then you can trademark the name as well. So those would be two different trademarks. So that's where the expense come in. You have that expense is what makes it add up, where it could be expensive. But I think, the filing fees are about $275. As an attorney, you're going to charge, whatever you're going to charge for it. So let's just say, and I'm just throwing out a number here, that it costs you $900, overall to do a trademark. In the scheme of things, that's not a lot of money compared to what it would actually protect you from.
Right. I don't know why I thought it was in the thousands, so that's not true, huh? And if I'm not mistaken,
not
I got
initially.
that information.
It could be in the thousands. Now, it could be there, depending upon, again, if you got your logo and you got your name, and you may have multiple classes that you want to be in there, where it could, in fact, add up to be in the thousands. But most people, probably aren't going to quite reach there. You may be at $1,000, max, because most people are going to do a logo and a name with one class, and generally speaking, that's only going to probably run you about $1,000.
That and like you said, in the scheme of things, that's really inexpensive. So, and this is why I love having experts like you on my show. We kind of get the truth instead of just going through all the I heard this, I heard that. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is copywriting. And, of course, since a majority of my listening audience are also authors, how important is it for us to, now we all put the little copyright symbol on our book, but how important is it, Shahara, to make sure that we actually follow through and send the information into the copyright office and copyright each and every book that we do?
I think it's so important, and the reason why it's important is because it gives you some legal protection, not just from in terms of people not stealing your work, because they should not be doing that anyway. But it also shows that you are the original author, so you have it filed. It's there in the Library of Congress, and so it shows that you are the author. So if there's any dispute, you can utilize that to show that you wrote it and when and all of that kind of stuff. And also there are some automatic penalties when they find that someone has copywritten your work or plagiarized your work. You can have penalties that are there that are in the code that are automatic. And so that gives you some financial protection as well, that you can say these are automatic sanctions, so to speak, against someone who has plagiarized your work that you can put in. So it gives you an extra layer of protection that you wouldn't have with the quote-unquote poor man's copyright, which, is fine. You don't have to send it to the Library of Congress, but especially with books, I think that's something that you should certainly do.
Absolutely, especially now they've made it so much easier. You could actually do it online, just sending them an electronic or digital copy of your book. And it's exactly. Now, along with that, and then we're going to go ahead and let you read an excerpt from your book. Just like we put the little copyright symbol on our copyright pages of our book, I also heard, so this is why I'm asking you this, so that way we can get truth away from the falsehoods. With trademark, is it true that if you just put the TM symbol behind your logo name, that automatically protects you with the trademark?
No. So the trademark is a little bit different. There's states that have trademark protection where you can register in the states, and then there's federal trademark protection. So I'm going to talk about the federal one just for perspective. So because there's different versions of it, but the federal one you do have to register. And so that TM, while it's fine to have, it doesn't. It's nothing wrong with having the TM. The TM just really means that it's not registered, that you're trademarking it, you're either in the process of it or whatever else, but it's not registered. And that's different from having an actual registered trademark where that you can really enforce keep people from utilizing your name. You have, protection because it's been shown. And they put it in a publication, so people, if they have a problem with it, they can contest it and things like that. So that was what makes it a registered, and that's where your enforce comes from. That's where your ability to enforce the changing of the name and all of that kind of stuff. So if somebody else registers that name and you have not registered it, and what happens is you create a litigation problem, where you might be fighting over the use of the name and who had it first and who was using it and blah, blah, blah. As opposed to if you went ahead and registered it, you would not have any of those issues and disputes because it's been registered. So it's not the same as a copyright, because in a copyright, the assumption is, and again, it's an assumption, that it's an original work, and that original work is automatic to whoever created that work. So the copyright is automatic. Registering the copyright really just helps you to have kind of teeth, so to speak, in trying to go against someone where there's fines and things like that. But a trademark should be registered to really have any enforcement protection, because without the registration, you really can't say who had it first, who did what first. It's almost impossible to do that.
Wow. Great information. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Shahara is going to read an excerpt from her book, From Entrepreneur to CEO, How to Position Your Business to Accelerate Growth. And you are just dynamite. Oh, you're dynamite. This is just awesome information. So we're going to put you on hold for just one moment, take a quick break, and come right back. One moment, please.
Thank you.
Sure.
PrimeStar Publicity and Public Relations is a full-service firm ready to fill the needs of their clients. Owner Helen Cook has more than 32 years of publicity, public relations, advertising and marketing experience, and she focuses her professional talents on working with her clients' strengths to create customized, strategic campaigns, whether their needs are great or small. Radio, TV, print, internet, publicity, marketing, creating a social media presence, branding, client positioning, author tours, speaking events. These are just some of the services PrimeStar provides for their clients. For a complete list of services and other information about the company, please visit our website, www.primestarpublicity.com, or email Helen at helen.cook@primestarpublicity.com, or phone 903-654-0938. PrimeStar's home office is located in the Houston, Texas area.
All right, we're back with author and attorney Shahara Wright, who is going to read an excerpt from her book, From Entrepreneur to CEO, How to Position Your Business to Accelerate Growth. Shahara, what page and what chapter will you be reading from?
How much time do I have? So I'm just going to make sure.
You got 5 minutes. We can do 5 minutes. We might go a little over, but we're still on the air. Go ahead, sweetie.
Okay. So I'm going to read from the introduction. It starts with page 11, and we'll see how far we get into it on the 5 minutes. But I think this would, answer a lot of questions I think that people have. Okay. Awesome. So I remember when I first decided to start my own business. I was 1 year out of law school, and I had worked for 2 different solo practitioners. Both practiced in areas that I was not interested in. I was interested in working for a corporation and was applying anywhere and everywhere I could. I tried for over a year to find a corporate job. I remember being so annoyed that I decided to just get some business cards and go it alone until someone would hire me. 15 years later, I'm advising small businesses on how not to do what I did. I had no idea what I was doing or why. I simply needed some income to feed my family, and hanging up my shingles seemed like the best thing to do at the time. It turned out to be the best decision I ever made, but it was a long, winding road that led me here. There were straighter, less crooked paths I could have and should have taken. Owning your own business is difficult. I have found that not having a stable income, finding reliable and useful help, marketing, and not having all of my agreements well documented, and I have to slap my own hand for this one, to be the most difficult issues for me and most businesses. I realized that my business was never going to grow beyond what it was at the time if I did not start making some serious changes. I had to go from being an entrepreneur to being a CEO. The definition of an entrepreneur is someone who takes risks to earn a profit. I would take that a step further to say that an entrepreneur takes risks to realize a dream. Investors take risks to earn a profit. Entrepreneurs risk their livelihood for a dream. A CEO develops and implements high-level strategies while making major corporate decisions. Look at it this way. An entrepreneur is like a noun. It is just a name, a description like a school or a garden. A CEO is an adjective. It is the kind of entrepreneur that you are. Acting like a CEO means you are the type of owner who looks at a business as a whole over a period of time and develops a plan to achieve a certain outcome. You do not simply exist for the sake of it. You define your existence. What kind of entrepreneur are you? Stop being just any type of entrepreneur. You must first change your attitude. An entrepreneurial attitude sounds good in theory, but the truth is the entrepreneurial attitude will keep you stagnant and prevent your business from growing to its full potential. I went through this same process. First, I had to start looking at my business as something separate and larger than myself. It required a big change in my behavior. I had to learn how to listen to other people and respect their opinions and methodology. If you want your business to grow beyond you, then you have to start acting like a CEO. This is not an easy thing to do. Entrepreneurs are relentless and stubborn, traits necessary for successful operating businesses. traits necessary for successfully operating a business. Unfortunately, these same traits are often materialized as short-sightedness and misguided focus in the life of an entrepreneur. Most business owners want to grow their business, but overlook that with growth comes change. Change starts with an owner who is willing to grow with their business, learn from world dynamics, and constantly change commercial models. For instance, you might be the best cook in your state, but understanding cooking is different than understanding how to run and manage a business. You must be willing to understand, learn, and adapt to the expectations of customers, changes in globalization, financial technology, issues, and competition. You must have a strategic framework for your business that is definable and usable. If you do not have a clear path for what you're trying to achieve, how do you know if you're getting the results that you need? This requires you to take the time to look at all aspects of your business.
Wow. Let's go ahead and stop there. Awesome. Awesome information. Shahara, you are just fantastic. We're going to have to get you back on the show.
I would love that.
Because I used to, I used to have a show that used to air on Fridays. Unfortunately, I'm not available on Friday evenings anymore, and it was called Taking Control of Your Destiny for people that had started their own business. And everything that you mentioned basically hit every point that people were having issues with. And one of the things that really resonated with me with what you just read is, as a business owner, you have to get past Lynda. And it's not about Lynda. It's now about the authors that you're serving. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm,
so,
I agree.
Wow. For my listening audience, her book is available on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, anywhere where books are sold. She does have the book available on Amazon in two different formats. The Kindle is currently $9.99, and the paperback is $19.95. I highly recommend that each and every one of you guys get a copy of this book because the information in here is just totally priceless. And for Miss Wright, what I would suggest you do, sweetheart, is make sure you have your author central page set up on Amazon. Did I send you a copy of How to Promote Your Business on a Shoestring Budget?
I think you did. I thought it was already set up on Amazon, but I'll go check it again.
Because I went right there. They've got your author page here. Oh, you know what? You're right. Oh, you know what it was? No, I take that back. I apologize. Your author central page is set up with these beautiful pictures of you rocking these great dreads. You look so cute. What I meant to say was the look inside the book where they can actually click on the book and read just like, absolutely. And I think my book shows you how to do that. If not, just send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to show you how to do that because you have just been fabulous today. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story and your knowledge with us. And, again, I really have to get you back on here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Well, we really enjoyed having you on. We'll get you the video out probably within the next couple of days. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and best of luck. You're going to be seeing your video all over YouTube and LinkedIn because you've got great advice here. Great advice.
Thank you.
All righty, sweetie. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was author Shahara Wright. And, again, she is the author of the book, From Entrepreneur to CEO, How to Position Your Business to Accelerate Growth. I highly recommend that you guys get a copy of this book ASAP. Well, that's our show for today. We'll be right back here tomorrow with author Dr. Christopher Friesen. He's going to be talking about his business. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and get out here and make Tuesday the best Tuesday you've ever had. Bye-bye.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Earlier this week, Claire Tippins shared a princess nickname generator, 3 pictures of her dog wearing a tutu, and 2 online quizzes, including what candy is your dream castle made of? Claire, your sharing has tipped the sugar scale and turned into oversharing. But have no fear, princess. Geico has something worth sharing with your internet kingdom, like how you could save hundreds on your car insurance just by visiting geico.com. No magic wand required. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.